have been led to believe that all of our problems were conditional, meaning however we were raised, whatever our parents told us, our teachers, those around us, our friends, we later became. We incorporated their beliefs into ours. And then people started going through the normal process of life and having problems, depression, anxiety, uncertainties. What do you do then? Well, you go see a psychiatrist or psychologist or behavioralist or a priest, a rabbi, a nun. You see someone who you trust that may have an answer for you. And we had some very famous people. We had Carl Jung, and we had Adler, and Ellis, and of course, Sigmund Freud. Here was the problem. I believe they were all well-intentioned, and I believe that what they allowed us to understand concerning our conditioning and how we acted out through our conditioning was fairly accurate. But why didn't it help people? Why is it that I had friends who were psychologists, psychiatrists, and they couldn't show me a single person they cured after decades of working in the field? So clearly it was more than just our behavior. Something else was not there. And it was only when I realized through a catharsis, through a crisis, by seeing what I thought I was doing, helping people, I really wasn't. Because every week in a large venue like this holds about 1,000 people, people would come once a week for 2 years. And during that 2-year period, they would ask questions. Everybody had questions. They would ask about their weight, and they would ask about migraines and fibromyalgia, and I would answer them in great detail. And then after 2 years, one night, my brother said, I can't do this anymore. My brother Stephen would go with me. And I said, why not? He said, because we're not helping anyone. I said, sure we're helping. He said, no, Gary, you're confusing our effort, our desire with results. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, let's do it differently tonight. So that night, instead of getting up and talking for 2 to 4 hours, he simply went to each person and said, you've been here every week for 2 years. Yes. You learned a lot? Learned a lot. How have you used it? And have you used it? Well, everyone said they learned a lot. They were taking notes. They were tape recording everything. They hadn't applied it. And I hadn't seen that. It was right in front of me. And I thought, wow. We have to differentiate between our desire to see change and whether or not it actually happens. And later that night, I took off on a plane, and on the next morning, suddenly, an epiphany, it just came to me, the other half of that equation. We are more than our conditioning. We are more than the input that comes from us. We are born with a life energy. And we have different life energies. That's why some people, you can never repress them. You can never keep them down. I don't care what obstacles you're faced with. If you're that energy, you're going to exceed those. And other people, they're just going to stay in the same place their whole life. They don't want a lot, but boy, they can't do a whole lot beyond what they do. Otherwise, become overwhelmed. Other people are multitaskers. You give them 20 jobs, they'll ask for 20 more. Some people, some life energies, you give them 2, and they're complaining and not doing either right. So I did a whole lot of research on this topic called life energies. And I saw what happens when you didn't have a form to express your creativity, your uniqueness of being. You had to fold yourself. You had to mesh your personality, your beliefs, your ideals in with everyone else's in order to get along, go along, be accepted. And I saw people who had unique talents. I knew they had unique talents. I was their friend. They never shared them. I had a buddy that was a great poet, but he was also a big jock, 6'4", Tom Croft, great guy, my best friend growing up. And he was an all-American athlete, yet he would never let anyone know that he wrote poetry because he was afraid that they would think he was gay. I said, well, you're not gay, but what it would matter anyhow, it's your life. And he would hide his poetry in a box in a closet. That's how fearful he was of people knowing that part of him. Because where I grew up, if you stood out, you stood alone.
The nature of expression is that we perceive and we express, just like we inhale and we exhale. So if I inhale and I never exhale, that's not going to work very well. And similarly, if I exhale and I never inhale, I will turn blue, which emotionally means I'll get depressed. So we have to keep perceiving and expressing, feeling and letting it come through us. And when we understandably block that, we have emotional difficulties and we have mental difficulties. It is very human that we will have these stops and starts, but we have the heart and mind and the company of each other to continue the flow so that we can restore health.
I am a doctor of Freud and Jung at the same time, no? And I think the positive psychology has made many very good contributions, but it's not enough, because this has been a very innocent psychology, because we know now from the neuroscience that the brain has many dark area and shadow area that we really need to work very hard. Change the mind is not easy, it's not an easy way. So if you say 1,000 of times that you are good, you are not good enough for that point. You need to change from different perspectives. The first thing is to paying attention. After that, going through the intention, going through the motivation, and change the pattern. Sometimes the people want the easy way to solve the problem. If you want to change your mind and change your pattern, you have to work, not only during a weekend or during a month or a master or PhD. You have to work forever.
Why can't you turn around and live your life in reverse, where you turn around and you look at your life and you look at the most important points of your life and you say, how did I get here? What allowed me to work at that job or do that thing? How did I get broke, or how did I get rich, or how did I get lonely, or how did I get with friends? Everything, both positive and negative, you analyze. And by looking back, starting right now and taking a step to yesterday or last week, you look at only the important learning points, the major events in your life. But then you do like a forensic expert, like an archaeologist out there brushing off a piece of dirt to find out what's really underneath without damaging it. You take the time and patience to deconstruct the choices you've made and ask, who was a part of that? Why did I do it? What was the cause? What was the outcome? Did I learn a lesson from it? Would I do it again or not? Because it's not making mistakes that's the problem with life. We all make mistakes. And the more risks you take, the more mistakes you make. As long as you learn from your mistakes, you're stronger because of them. They actually aid you. They help you. People are afraid, who are traumatized. I don't want to look bad. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want anyone to judge me. I don't want to feel less than. I don't want someone to think I'm here, but I'm really here. I don't want to seem like I'm a fraud because, and you have all these fears and insecurities. Go down to Wall Street. Right now, we're broadcasting in an evening. You have the greatest concentrations of wealth, success, and power on the planet. There's no single piece of geography anywhere, not Tokyo, not Saudi Arabia, not London, not France, nowhere where you have as many accomplished, successful people. You wouldn't know that walking down the street because they're not all celebrities, but in their field, they're celebrities. You just don't know who's in their field. You don't know they might be a famous professor at Columbia, and they may not care, but the fact you have this much concentration. Well, how many of those people do you think are really happy, can just relax and exhale, are not afraid of their incompletenesses, not afraid of their imperfections, not afraid of who they actually are? Compare that to how many people will be working at night instead of home with their family, friends, and their companions. Be working this weekend, and everywhere they go, even to dinner, they'll have a cell phone. They'll be texting, they'll be looking to make sure they're not out of the loop. They have been wedded to the electronic information feedback loop. They can't break free of it. And then their kids look at this, and then in every elevator you get in America, this is all they're doing. In every museum, this is what they're doing. In movie theaters, if you sit at the back, you can see all the blue lights on. All those blue lights are people texting during a movie, or opera, or ballet. What does it mean when someone is so insensitive, so rude, so lacking in manners, so lacking in an understanding that you're in this environment? Then be in that environment. But that's not how we live. Wherever we're at, we want to be someplace else. Whatever we have, we want something more.
The more selfish you are, the more discontented you are all the time. So then you're never satisfied. So then you defeated your selfish interest. because you're always frustrated and you want something more. Look at these billionaires who have to have another billion, right? Or 10 more to match up their neighboring billionaire. Meanwhile, they are paranoidly aware that they're hated by a lot of destitute people around them. And they're unhappy people. The Dalai Lama has a great slogan where he says, if you want to be happy, make someone else happy. Or sometimes he says, if you want to be happy, be compassionate. And this comes from a famous teaching that is considered really of a kind of heart teaching of Buddhism, called the precept of the exchange, the equal exchange of self and other, which in a way is just something like putting yourself in the other person's shoes, like you have in a proverb, It's really a more systematic version of that. And what it means is that unhappiness comes from excessive self-preoccupation. Because as I said earlier, when you're always evaluating where you are and what you've got and what your lot is and how people are dealing with you, you'll always be dissatisfied. So when you're really carried away and you forget about where your situation in things and you're in the flow, for whatever reason, something that you're doing with great concentration, or could be something you're enjoying and with great relaxation, either one. And when you're in that state, then you're forgetting about what state you're in, and then you're feeling better because your default state is all right because you're luckily a human being, which is a very lucky form of life to be, actually. So that's when you're free of self-preoccupation. So the teaching of the exchange of self and other means if you're more preoccupied with the condition of others and you're tending to more forget about yourself, then you're actually going to feel better yourself. Actually, or you're sort of imitating a state of being in the flow before you get there. It's at some level, and at the deepest level, when you're really, it's like when you give something to someone and they're really happy about it, and then you're enjoying their happiness for that split second. You don't think about, are they going to thank me? Is there a reward in this? What do I get? You just enjoy, So why people are happy at Christmas, Not the commercial side of it all, but the sort of pleasure of others getting something. And, all those sentimental things we associate with Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. People always imitate. Our family's Buddhist, but we had small kids, and, you got to do something at Christmas anyway. It doesn't matter. Little baby Jesus or baby Buddha or baby anybody, baby Moses even, in the bulrushes, it doesn't matter. Everyone gets into that at the time of the winter solstice, it seems. All cultures have something like that. And so that's the thing about self-preoccupation versus other preoccupation. Now, some people worry about that when they hear about it, and they think that means, you're supposed to be a martyr. Other people are going to trample on you if you don't think about your own self-purpose and self-interest in things. But actually, it's a very wise thing. If you want to fulfill your self-interest, be more focused on altruism. And then you will be more happy yourself, and you'll be more successful. People will like you more. You'll get better feedback in your relations with people, and you'll basically be happier. And it's a really profound teaching. So, back to the slogan: if you want to be, or even here's another great way of saying it: if you want to be successfully selfish, be a wise selfish, and be altruistic. He has a great slogan like that.
We live in duality between rights and wrongs, good and bad, pretty and unpretty, happy and sad, rich and poor, and we separate and make cubes of everything and everyone, and then try to make sure we fit where it's acceptable. And I came up with the concept that is maladaptive by degrees, and the more degrees of maladaptation that you make in your life, the further away you get from what it is to be a true, authentic human being. And then you start associating with people who are not true, authentic human beings. Instead, they are adapted to you. Imagine being around a bunch of people who think it's okay to get greedy and then exploit people like they do on Wall Street and the banks and politicians to get something from people who don't know the game you're playing on them, don't know the power play you're doing. But at the end of this, they're going to have riches or power, and you'll be out of that too.
One of the most important things as we grow and mature is to learn to be less self-absorbed, to be less self-centered. instead of being achievement-oriented or me first, the feeling and the realization that we're all in this together is so important, that we are a community, that human beings are animals of community. We're not individuals, that we have to find a way to realize that happiness is built on compassion and empathy, that happiness is not about getting the biggest piece of pie for me, but it really is about a sense of well-being, a sense of community, of sharing, of give and take. And that kind of love, that kind of community is really hardwired in our DNA. It's not just as if we're an animal by ourselves alone, that we feel as if love is about who we are all together. And if we can get this back in our bones, we'll all be better for it.
The point is, we have been focused, especially in the Western culture, to the acquisition of goods or service, or the satisfaction or a pulsion or a desire and present desire, and not oriented to the internalization of the inside process. So now the people in the 21st century are more and more interested in this process, how we can know myself better in order to internalize the real happiness. What makes you real happy? When we make so many studies about the happiness, what we see is what you really make you happy is the love. But we are not perceiving the love. We are perceiving the acquisition of goods. So we need to clarify where we are putting consciousness and attention in our real life. For that point, we need really strategy and competency to understand and practice what's the path of the happiness. And one path of the happiness is, of course, the compassion, the altruism, the empathy, the love and the kindness for all the humans.
We are not capable of being happy alone in ourselves. We have no skill. We're taught not to develop the ability of just feeling happy in ourselves. It's not allowed, kind of. And so that could be a drug. We need a drug to be happy. And these could be either legal or illegal ones. You know, the tranquilizer industry, you know, Prozac, Zoloft, this kind of thing, is huge. It's like barrels of billions of tons of this stuff is sold all the time. So the biggest obstacle is that we're kind of helpless in ourselves to find happiness in ourselves. That's the worst obstacle. And that, you know, we're a weirdo if we meditate, or we're strange if we do yoga. So we're always staring outside. Like people in the many states, in many households, I think it's an average of 12 hours of TV a day, because they think that somehow they're going to get it from the box. But meanwhile, TV news, and a lot of it is fake propaganda nowadays, is basically there to make you paranoid, to vote for and to be, buy more guns and be more paranoid about other people, giving you all bad news all the time. And then the commercials are there to make you feel discontented and dissatisfied all the time, to buy more clothes, to change yourself, to get another car, to get another house, to get more money, whatever it is, get some more objects.
Live light, go minimalist. We end up having $80 billion last Black Friday, plus a guy got trampled to death, where people getting their flat screen TVs, buying stuff they couldn't afford, things they didn't need, because they were driven by insecurity, that they weren't enough. But if they had that flat screen TV, they surely would feel enough. No, those are people who are maladapted over here, just trying to stuff something else into an overburdened life, instead of coming back, a quantum step back to the authentic self. We live in a nation of people pretending to be on our side, having our backs, being honest with us. And then one day we find out, well, what do you mean you've known for 40 years that drug caused cancer? What do you mean you knew for 100 years cigarette smoking was addictive and caused cancer? What do you mean you knew that Vioxx could cause heart attacks and strokes? What do you mean? And the list is 1,000 times we've been lied to and exploited, and they simply pay a fine. No one's reputation is hurt. They check off cost of doing business. So we're merely commodities. And if they should have to pay some of that back, a small token of it back, they never have to give up the ill-gotten gains. Remember when one of the biggest banks in the world was caught laundering money for the drug cartels of Mexico and South America, plus terrorist money? $800 billion, with a B, billion dollars. They were fined about $900 million, did not have to give back any of the money, and no one went to jail. No one's reputation was destroyed. The very next day they settled, their stock went up. And yet we see people jaywalking being given tickets or being stopped and searched because of your ethnicity, color of your skin, what you're wearing. And I'm thinking, how did we get this way? Because we maladapted. So maladapted that we no longer recognize what is the point of pure spirituality.
I recently saw a figure that the police this year killed 1,254 people in the United States. The police killed that many people. And I remember the former police chief of Seattle who had to crack down on all the weird kids who were protesting in '99, the World Trade Organization meeting there, who were all dressed up as frogs and turtles and things, all cute. There were a few anarchists who broke windows, but mostly they were nice and peaceful. And then they had to beat them up, the police. And that guy later, he made a statement in the middle of the Bush administration how the militarization of all the police forces from the Bush-Cheney Pentagon that was selling used military equipment to all the police at a bargain basement prices was a real disaster and would lead to a lot of trouble, which we're seeing nowadays.
Socially, collectively, and culturally, you know, we live in a time, it's no surprise, especially in America, with just an inordinate amount of these mass shootings and these inexplicable killings that are going on. Yes, these individuals are responsible for their actions, and they may be out of their minds, and they may be cut off from a life of feeling and compassion. We are also charged to look at the body of society and what kind of pressures are we under that are causing these social aneurysms that are exploding everywhere. It's not enough just to say, oh, they're crazy, that has nothing to do with me. They are responsible and we are responsible for creating a system, a body, a social body, a cultural body that is so stressed that individual cells are exploding all over the place.
All babies are born with pure spirit. There is no such thing as a racist baby. There's no such thing as a bigoted baby. There's no such thing as a killer baby. But adapt them the wrong way, and one day they're making decisions over here and you're thinking, why'd you do that? Why'd you mug that person? Why'd you steal from that person? Why did you pump and dump stock? Why'd you do that? And they don't know. We've all experienced working really hard to make something work, right? I mean, whether it's a relationship or helping your kids or helping your parents or doing the right job, right? And the right work, showing people, I'm here, I come early, I leave late, I'm working on this as much as I can, right? All of us try all the time to be the best that we can at what we do. That's good, in the sense that we are working hard at it. And you hear people say how hard they work, right? At something. I gave it my all, but it didn't work. And then we get the letdown. As hard as they worked and as much as they wanted that to be perfect, it wasn't. So as you begin this tumbling down your dreams, we begin to look for people or things or ourselves to blame. And we've all been there, haven't you? Just think how many times you wanted to be the right weight. and you look in the mirror and you're getting bigger clothes, you're angry, right? And you wanted your friendships to work out, and think of how many times you work real hard and you compromise so much of your own ideals to make that relationship work, and it didn't. We've made a big mistake. We've mastered our careers and we have not mastered our lives. That's where we begin this journey, because my goal is to get us to understand how to stop putting energy into that which shouldn't be energized at all.
Because the human nature is incapable of being happy in its own self, at rest, quietly and peacefully, because happiness is there to be had by a person who is calm and sort of internally balanced, which is a skill that you can cultivate, not a circumstance that you find or acquire. So that theory is the big obstacle, because then you're just running after stuff. You're pursuing, they even put in the famous Declaration of Independence, pursuit of happiness, but never the enjoyment of happiness, just the pursuit. So that obstacle has to be, the way to overcome that obstacle is to look to yourself.
And the reason we keep making these mistakes with our lives, and we just are serial offenders, or we're not living authentic lives, is because we're not harmonizing. I'll give you a few examples from my own life. I came to New York, I had no background in literature or writing. I was naive and just in wonder of this great, big, beautiful city. I had no money, got off a Greyhound bus with $12 in my pocket. But I figured out how to live in the city, even though I was poor, by doing things a lot of people would never think of doing. Going to standing outside of a Broadway play, and when everyone came out at intermission, talking to them about the first act, and then as they all went in, I'd go back in with them and find an empty seat, and it was called second acting. So every night I went to a different Broadway show. I'd do the same thing at a ball game, a concert. I found a way of seeing that the Salvation Army at that time would actually, they don't do it now and haven't for a long time, but they actually put boxes of Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue clothes. I bought suits, Madison Avenue clothes suits, and I could recut them for myself and all my friends. We were all poor, but we dressed to the nines. I enjoyed life, and I wrote a little book, an insignificant little book on this. But someone invited me on a radio show to talk about it, then on a television show, small television show, but a person was watching it. And she called and she said, "Young man, my husband and I we're old, and everyone in the health field is old, and there's no one young. Would you write a book for us?" I have no knowledge of nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist. She said, "You don't have to be. None of them are either. But you've got common sense. Study. Write what's important." And I was receiving a $500 advance. It took me 2 years to research and write the book. That was $250 a year. This was a small publishing company, and they did scholarly books, very famous, but scholarly books, not mainstream books. And they put me on this little tour, and they did a small printing. So everything worked perfectly because there was perfect harmony. Now, what do I mean? Here's what I mean. Right idea, writing a book on health for the average person, but the book itself was unique in that I talked about everything that was wrong. One chapter was Pretty Poison, about how the cosmetics, shampoos, everything we use are frequently loaded with chemicals that are toxic to our body. The cattle being given antibiotics and chickens, and how we were taking in all these drugs and hormones through eating animals, and pesticides, and all the different types of over-the-counter medication we were using instead of letting the body engage in the process of self-healing. So it was the right idea at the right time with the right support system, a couple who wanted to see it happen and had the means to support it happening, publishing the book, and the right place, New York City. And I was the right person because I had not been corrupted, and I was willing to see and do all the work without saying, well, I'm not going to write, 500-page book for, $500. And as a result, it was a monster hit. On PBS, the same thing. I had the right idea, anti-aging. This was 1998 when a lot of people, a lot of baby boomers' parents were starting to suffer from problems, and they were looking in the mirror not seeing the same vitality. They were not seeing the skin, the muscle, the energy. And so suddenly, health was an interesting issue, especially if you're over the age of 50. We had a lot of millions of Americans over 50. And PBS was the right support system with Bob Marty there to usher it through. So right time, right ideas, right place, nationwide, right support team, and being the right person. So 2 out of many times in my life, everything worked because it was perfect harmony. Harmony, it worked. In the relationship, like most people, I've had different relationships, and at different points they work and other points they don't. And how many times have I or other people worked on a relationship? You help someone try to work through their emotional issues or their traumas. At the end, I never succeeded. I was never able to help people. Now I understand why. Now I won't do that again. I'll work on life, but I'll only share life with someone who's also worked on their life, so you're in harmony. Because when you're in harmony with another person, where your energies are really flowing, it's one of the most beautiful, wonderful experiences you could possibly imagine. But now take one of those equations. Right time, good. Right ideas, share the best of yourself with another human being. Respect each other, honor each other, excite each other, challenge each other. And right support system, you're for them, they're for you. But then one or the other is not the right person. Now, see how long you spend trying to make it work, only to find out it never will. You see, I'm one of those people who believe that you commit yourself to something through thick and thin and you work on it. And I have to be honest today, in my personal experience, I'm only speaking for myself, if it's broken, I'm not going to fix it. If people want to fix their life, then they have to own that energy. They have to be committed to that, and they can't be distracted. They can't have insecurity, fear, anger, rage, depression, or anxiety being the excuses that they use for not committing themselves 100% to their own completeness. In other words, going from maladaptive back to spiritual.
Many people who come to me as a couples therapist seem to be in a place where they're just adapting to each other's maladaptive behavior. And they just feel that, well, this is the best we can do. Whereas the opportunity is to really see our own stuff, to really see our own side of what our beliefs are, what we're identified with, and to have a sense of a willingness to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, even for a moment, to really listen and to almost exchange roles. Well, what are you saying? What would it be like if I felt the way you did? Why are you upset when I don't take out the garbage? What is it that is you feel I'm saying about you? So sometimes continuing the conversation a little more deeply, but mainly it's the willingness to almost hear a little deeper, a little further. What is it that is in the way? What is it that we can't understand, that we almost caricature in the other person? Oh, well, if they feel that way, then that means they hate me and I'm not good enough, therefore I'm going to protect myself and defend myself. But if we listen, we all want the same thing. We all want love. We all want to grow. And so the possibility is really to find practical ways of compassion.
But if you want to get the love, the real love, you have to work to make possible relational contract bases, of course, in empathy, compassion, trustful, and happiness. That's mean for me commitment. In our society, the commitment is very rare because the people don't want to have commitment. Basically, we are living in a liquid society, in a virtual society. We have Facebook, and we believe that we have thousands of friends, but in fact, we cannot get thousands of friends. At the same time, we are looking for this desired relation, but we don't want to go deeper inside one relation and make this relation work. So that's very important.
The only way we get better is we, individually, harmonize with the right ideas, the right people to support us. The right time is now, because how many times people have not been ready for the relationship, not been ready for the opportunity, not been ready for the healing, not been ready for the new insights, not been ready to take a chance, still coming from insecurity. And yet we like to think everything's going to wait. Nothing waits. Life goes on. That's one of the phenomena of harmonizing with life as it moves. Otherwise, all you have are remembrances of what didn't work, the opportunities you didn't take, or you weren't mature enough when the opportunity came to benefit and grow with it. We have to be the right person for the opportunity that manifests. And what happens if you are in the right place with the right ideas in the right time, but you have the wrong support system? How many people are angry at you when you want to grow and they don't? They liked you just the way you were. So we have to understand that all 5 energies working together, it flows. I give people opportunity all the time. I believe that if you're really a caring, loving person, manifests by giving people a chance. But at the end of the day, all we can do is provide a support and an opportunity. Now, this is the time, but we can't make the choice for someone. We can't be them. 18 million hungry children, 3.5 million who are homeless, 8 million homes foreclosed on, 4 people for homeless, 28 million Americans having to find homes somewhere else that are not their own, couch surfing, and yet they weren't helped. The bankers were helped, the greedy people were helped, the people that created the problem were helped. The average person wasn't helped. Small businesses weren't helped. Farmers weren't helped. Everywhere you look, the people in power have exploited, but then they always have harmonizing energies. They get all these best and brightest out of Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Stanford to come to work for them because they seem to be able to know more as technocrats than a bureaucrat. And the people who power the whole system are the oligarchs, the dynamic aggressives. So they harmonize. If you want to work in these firms, you want to work in these institutions, you have to harmonize with them. So whatever their values are, their creeds, their goals, you have to be in sync with them. If you're in sync, you are rewarded. If you challenge them, you are punished, you're excluded. Well, what happens when we already are maladaptive? Then almost everyone we associate with will themselves be maladaptive because we feel comfortable being in harmony with people, like thieves being comfortable around other thieves. One eye is always open, though.
The fear about the other is something very human. We need to work for that and create more empathy and compassion towards the other. For example, the solution to the Syrian refugee is not only to give food to them, it's to meditate, for example, in the value of the Islam values. So if we need, and we want to finish this situation, we need to read more the Quran, for example. So we need to know the other. I mean the alterity of the other. In all this society, there are really very good persons who want to save people and help them. And at the same time, there are people who are not empathic people, who has fear of the other. And the only solution is to know the other and to understand how beautiful are the other culture and how we need the other in order to be ourselves.
So you see, you can harmonize with the wrong people or the right people. You can harmonize with yourself, or you can be out of harmony. You can come from the spirit, or you can come from manufactured, conditioned maladaptation. And then one day, yeah, you've mastered your personality, you've mastered your charm, you've mastered your shtick, your story, but you haven't mastered your life. So everything is just an illusion. Now, try getting substance from illusion. You can't, it doesn't exist. Remember, what you align with, you become. So I'd like to align myself with health and happiness and excitement and joy and creativity and that which honors life and people without discrimination, without bias. That's my choice. No one forces me to be a bad person. No one forces me to be anything other than what I choose to be. Fear of abandonment causes a lot of us to stay in bad relationships, work relationships, family relationships, personal relationships, or friendships. If it's bad, get out of it. Don't try to change it. Don't change for it. Because a lot of times people think, well, all I have to do is change who I am, and then there won't be any arguments. Yeah, and there won't be any you. Then if a person's saying, well, I like you as long as you change to be what I expect you to be, well, then you're not you. You're just an extension of someone else's ego. We need to pride ourselves in who we are, not in how we've adapted to be someone else.
Many people who try to make things work, whether it's in an intimate relationship or at work, they do the best they can, and at some point, couples and people need to realize that they may not be able to work together. And this is, one of the realities of life. And it can be more painful to try to work things out at some point than to let things go. And so really realizing what the basic or bottom line is for each person. Where is the growth edge, and where is the sense of what meaning or sense of self each person has based on who they are and how they live and what they feel is valuable. And sometimes those things mesh and sometimes they don't.
We are set on a journey to release our own gifts, to find and inhabit our own worth, and to affirm each other. And it's very natural, especially in when we're teenagers and we're first love, someone finally sees us. And oh my God, we're seen and we start to feel our own aliveness and worth. But understandably, first love, they've switched on the light that's in us, and we think they control the switch. And the best that we can do to affirm and honor anyone who loves us is to keep the light on ourselves and to mirror their light. So we tend very naturally early on in our inexperience of love is to give our power away that other people are going to fill us. And the great French philosopher Rabelais said, "A child is a fire to be lit, not a vase to be filled."
What we want more than anything else is someone to care for us, love us, protect us, to share with us, to nurture us. That's what we want. But that's not what we need. What we need is to be with people who are caring and loving and nurturing and thoughtful and honor us because we already have those qualities. When you bring yourself together with another person and you're both in alignment, it's just like listening to the wonder of a symphony where every single chord, every note is harmonized. And that harmony is what allows us sitting there to just be mesmerized by the completeness of it. And the conductor is not playing any instrument, but knows every instrument. The conductor is the one serving us the meal. So when you're harmonized, that's when you see the best of all things. That's when everything comes together the way it should. What's missing from your life? Now, how does that missing element impact you? Because we must take an inventory. We have to spend time quietly alone and go down each element of our life and say, what's missing? Is my health missing? Is my friendships missing? Is a relationship missing? Is doing something creative instead of passive? Watching television, passive. Reading, passive. Going to a concert, passive. Being on the internet all day, passive. Speaking on the phone, passive. We spend an inordinate amount of our time in passive, voyeuristic activity instead of being dynamically engaged in creating a moment that is remarkable for us or others that will last. And yet, think of how many people cannot even remember how many days, months, and years they have spent engaged in passive living instead of active living. But to actively live, you have to be complete, because otherwise you'll be too insecure. You'll be fearful of the mistakes you'll make and how you'll be judged. And so we don't want to be judged harshly. Well, then you're around the wrong people, because the people you should have in your life are not going to judge you harshly. They can communicate with you, they can share what they like and don't like, but they still love you. Other people, they'll criticize you, they don't love you.
When we can honor what is true in each other, then I don't need you to fill me up. I need you to remind me of my own resources when I'm in pain or fear or desperate or lose access to who I am. So those are healthy attachments where we remind each other who we are. Unhealthy attachments are when I consciously or unconsciously want you to live my life for me. I want to live vicariously through you. I'm afraid to take a risk to sing, so I like to listen to you sing. I'm afraid to meet people socially, so I'll tag along when you're more extroverted and I'll just kind of look over your shoulder. So those are unhealthy attachments. And it's very interesting that we move through this, and one of the shadows of attachment is that we often give ourselves up in order to belong. So one of the things I've learned is that if someone loves you, they want you to grow. If someone doesn't want you to grow, I don't know what you call it, but it's not love.
So how does that impact you when you can't be yourself? You're afraid to say something because it may not be politically correct. You're afraid to do something because someone will see that maybe you can't master it. If we're not Rembrandt, don't paint. Why? Whatever you do, it's you doing it. Don't compete against other people. When I write a book, when I do a lecture, when I'm doing this lecture, I'm not competing against anybody. There could be 10,000 people right now doing some form of self-expression, something they believe is going to impact and help people. Maybe it will. But I don't know what they're doing. That's not my business. That's their business. But they don't know what's in me. They don't know how I come to ideas. They don't know how I tie these ideas together, just like I did tonight, explaining the life energies and how that opened up a whole new way of looking at life. And then living your life in reverse. And then looking at life from a spiritual rather than a maladaptive position. And then learning your lessons before you get to your destination. And then asking yourself, what do I want my destination to be? Well, if I want my destination to be happiness, then I can't be unhappy. If I want health, I can't make unhealthy choices. Everyone where I grew up didn't care. They assumed that it's inevitable. There's a fatalistic, whatever happens, well, there's a number, it's in a book somewhere, and too bad, you can't do anything. It's all in the genes. None of it's true. Unless you believe it, then it's completely true. That's the problem. When you think you can't do something, you're right. When you think you can, you're right. When you think you're going to get sick, you're right. When you think you're going to stay healthy, you're right. The trouble is we're right about everything. We just don't like the rewards we get for being right on the wrong side of the issue. So we need to think before we act, reason before we act and ask, what do I want? What do I need? And also, we got to get over this thing that everything lasts for everything. Everything has an expiration date. Think of all the times you had people in your lives, friends you had in your lives, and then one day they're gone, dead. You forgot about them, or they forgot about you. Think of the cat, the dog that you had, that you were loving. They were a puppy, they were a kitten. Then they were always there, and then they were dead. Think of the parents, gone. We forget of how tenuous everything is.
Two of the most important things to realize for our own happiness is the first one, which is maybe the harder one, is that everything has an expiration date, that things are continually changing, that we can't rely on anything staying the same. We can't hang our hat on one thing. But the other is to realize there's something that doesn't change. There's some sense of continuous interconnection, some sense of background silence, some sense of that everything is not separate. So even the changing separate things are interconnected, that there's a flow or a kind of feeling of life being life, life going on. And that feeling, that knowing of that dimension of our being is really what allows us to be okay with everything changing.
We need to know that everything is impermanent, and in one way we know that principle, we have to accept this principle. We have, of course, fears because we don't know how to deal with the adversity, how to deal with the change, because we want to control. The problem is the ego-controlled men who are inside us, and we want to take care and control everything, all the process. But as much as you can feel this sensation that you don't have any control about anything in your life, more relaxed as you become, and more connected with this sense of impermanence and synchronicity with all.
So doesn't it make sense to harmonize with the moment you're in? Therefore, if I'm harmonizing life, then this day counts. I'm going to honor and respect this 24 hours because I can't live it over again, but I have to be the right person in this time, and I'll surround myself with people who are on that same journey with me, even if it's for a moment in time. Sometimes a relationship or people you're with or ideas will come and then they're gone. So when you intentionally are no longer the right person, and you intentionally alienate the people who are part of your support group, then you're only working on 2 qualities, and it takes all 5 to harmonize. You getting what I'm saying? You got to have 5 harmonies to make it work. Otherwise, all you're doing is trying hard. And how many times have you said, I don't understand, I try so hard, I try so hard. Yeah, and you got the wrong mother in your case. Can't help it. Or you got the wrong father, you got the wrong brother, you got the wrong sister. Someone in this room had a sister that took their credit card, ran up $13,000 expense and didn't pay it. And it ruined the other person's credit. That's a wrong support system. And yet because they're family, we think that, well, what am I going to do? What are you going to do? You're not going to be around that person anymore. They don't have the right to abuse you because they have the same bloodline. What do you show up with in life? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to give it away? Because when we show up, we have to ask, of the baggage we're showing up with, what can we use? What is wonderful? And what should we throw away? And you know what we do? We want to keep it all. You can't. Unclutter your emotions, unclutter your life, travel light. What do you do to prevent disruptions into the flow of your life? First and foremost, how about asking people, if they're not there to honor your life, not to interrupt your life? If they're not there to support you, don't be there to be a problem for you. You got to ask yourself, where do I live? What am I doing? Is it time that I said goodbye to where I'm at and change my life If you can't say goodbye to where you're at, then you don't have a life. All you have is a repetition day in and day out, like Groundhog Day. All you have is a set of rituals that you honor and go through every day. Well, how many days of your life do you waste with rituals instead of having something vital in there? Vitalism is what caused you to be alive. Otherwise, you're a zombie. You're just going through the motions, looking for something to attach to that has life that you don't. And consuming by being a part of a herd. Oh, let's go watch this. Let's eat that. Let's do that. Why? You can't live this day over again. Do you possess all the resources necessary for your own growth? Assess yourself. Be honest. Whatever you're missing, work on it. Engage your fear. Embrace your rage. And realize it's all an illusion. When something is an illusion, don't make it real. Let it go. And see what tools you need to go forward. Joy and happiness, humor, a lightness of being, all of those are a ticket in.
One of the key things in attitude, in being with whatever difficulties life presents us, for me and for those people that I work with, is to continually to return to opening your heart and mind. Because it's only through that opening that the resources of life, which are healing, can get in. And traditions speak about this in many ways. The Tibetan tradition speaks that a spiritual warrior, that is one committed to a life of transformation, not a military warrior. A spiritual warrior always has a crack in their heart because that's how the mysteries get in. And so one of the things that's very human, everything about us physically as well emotionally and mentally, we open and close, we expand, we contract. Our muscles and our eyes dilate and constrict. I'm inhaling and exhaling as I'm talking to you. And so too the heart and the mind. So when we close, we need a practice. I need a practice. I still try to work on a practice to open. When I fall down, I need to get up. When I go numb, I need to wake. And this becomes a very personal practice of return that everyone has to inhabit and discover individually.
It's not about studying books. The nice thing about harmonizing life is today, it's we, not me. That's how you harmonize. Don't think of the future as all about you against the world. You don't win. Think about you with other people making positive choices. Then you suddenly take a step forward. We become obsessed with something, and then that takes over all of our thoughts, and it imbalances everything else. When you live in balance, then you're going to be healthy, because you're not going to be doing anything that's unhealthy. You see, balance isn't taking something as bad, like bacon and sugar and alcohol, and something good, like juice and sprouts, and I can have this as long as I have this. That's how most people think. You know, I can do something stupid as long as I do something smart. Balance is when I take the best I could do and each day try to match it. And by trying to match the best I could be, the best I could do, I'm living in a harmonized balance. It's when we stop caring about the choices we make, stop caring about the people in this world, stop caring about what we're able to help other people with, and we begin to lose that part of us that maintain our balance, our spiritual balance, our compassion balance, our creative balance, and then we're completely out of balance. And then we're just a mess. We're just a whole bunch of excuses and mastered stories of woe. And we've seen that doesn't work. The moment you take away what is sacred in another person, then you no longer harmonize with the value of their life. And you can snap it out. The Germans did it, 15 million of them. Were they all bad? No. Were they all atheists, didn't believe in God? No, most of them were Christian. Same Christians that enjoyed the Crusades. That's what happens when you harmonize with the wrong beliefs. The Crusades believed, they harmonized The indigenous people, the Muslims of the Middle East weren't part of that harmony, and they died. The people who were the midwives and the women who enjoyed handcrafted herbs to help people, they were called witches. And everyone in North America and South America was called a heathen, no better than a reptile. And therefore their decimation, by any means, was completely accepted. It harmonized with the official theocracy and the power. So you can kill anyone you want as long as you're harmonizing with those in power to do it. You can lie, like all the major media does, about everything, all the time. So think of the bankers. You trust them to know how to deal with your money, and look what they did. Isn't it interesting? We've harmonized our lives, our trust, our future, our children's future, to the most corrupt, vile, despicable human beings on the planet. Our terrorists are domestic terrorists, political terrorists, religious terrorists, ethical terrorists. They control the social contract. They wrote it for themselves, not us. And I wonder then why you have to work 2 jobs and don't have a living wage, yet our parents back in the 40s and 50s were able to raise a family, have no debt, no credit cards, no cell phones, no computers, and gee whiz, they actually had children that were literate, that were polite, that were mannered, and that cared.
Many people have 2 and 3 jobs that just to pay the bills. And it keeps us from the other values that are so important, the other parts of our life, like family, like friends, like leisure, like rest.
So the politicians lied to us and we continue to re-elect them. Everything about that person is a lie. It's all staged. They're rehearsed. Everything out of their mouth is what some person told them to say to get your confidence. And once they have that confidence, once they have the power, they create Iraq, they create Afghanistan's, they create Libya's, they create Syria's, they create universal spying. They harmonize with fearing you, so now they want to know everything you do. They're watching every move you make electronically. They're looking at everything in your life. Why? Because they want to make sure that you're never out of harmony with them.
So we can see how we get caught in stories, and it creates a kind of feeling of insecurity and then leads us to feel like we have to do something about it. I mean, we can look at the country's reaction to 9/11 or to recent bombings in Paris, where people feel as if once they're vulnerable, they need to find a new stability. And many people become reactive as if revenge or becoming just as violent is the solution. But this story is not always the best story. The story of negativity, the story of strength, of feeling like we're put down, so we need to be the top dog. There may be a new story that we can discover about the pain and suffering of many people, and how when we feel like we're attacked, there's another story that we can find together about how to respond.
The whole process is denigrated, and in spite of all that, more and more Americans are seeing that what they've been told is the right path is the wrong path. And we're now starting to make some changes, but we've been so conditioned by the lie, we don't even see the truth when it's right in front of us. That's how powerful conditioning is. It's right in your face and you can't see it. You see our kids with diabetes and heart disease. You see kids graduating from school who are functionally illiterate. All they knew is how to take a test they know nothing about. We see teachers afraid to challenge a kid because the kid is most likely not to smack or sass back or hurt the teacher. We see unions protecting themselves, not looking at how the system has been compromised. We see privatization and greed everywhere. And we wonder, gee whiz, how'd that happen? Well, it happened when you harmonized with the wrong belief system, with the wrong politicians, with the wrong personalities, with the wrong energy. Whatever energy you harmonize, you become, and then you got to defend. So if you've made the wrong choices, now you find yourself having to try to tell a person why they should continue believing in something that has no value. Does that make sense to you? Now do you see the power of harmonizing? If you harmonize with the wrong energy, you end up dead. Broke, disillusioned, heartbroken, betrayed. Don't question the intent. Our big mistake is we think as long as someone has the right intention and is going through efforts, that that's all that counts. I don't care about your intent. I don't care about your efforts. I care about the results. We should pay people based upon the results of their actions, not their efforts. But we're not criticized for doing it wrong. We're rewarded for our failing. If you fail running this corporation, go over here and run this one and get even more. We fail up when we have power, and we fail out when we don't. So we have to take an honest look at our lives and what we've aligned with. And if we haven't aligned with something that is authentic, that has good results, then get out of it. Just remember, had I written a book about health, but not the book I wrote on health, and had I done it with a major publisher instead of a little publisher, I would not have succeeded. A big publisher, I'd have been an unknown author, they wouldn't have given me any tour. A little publisher gave me a little tour, and they let me write the book my way. Hence, it harmonized. Had I did the show he wanted me to do on women, I wouldn't have had that hit. As a result, I had the biggest hit to that time in PBS history because I had the right idea at the right time with the right support system, and I was the right person, and it worked. But had I had a different idea, it'd have been okay, it wouldn't have rang any bells. So we got to get out of this idea, well, I tried. Well, that's not what's important if you tried. What's important is what did you learn from your efforts that allow you to realign yourself to do it right this time. So, look at the piece that's not harmonizing. Stop focusing upon your intent or you being the right person. You may be the right person. You may have the right intent, but if we've got the wrong support system, that support system is not right. It's going to undermine your whole effort. And what are you going to do then? You're going to go into crisis. Or what if you don't have the right idea, but you're not open to other ideas? Then try to get the wrong idea to become the right idea, and you're not going to succeed. Always look at what's not right in your life, and that is this is harmonizing energy. Always look at what doesn't work, because that's what you've got to separate yourself from. You've got to let go of that and replace it with something that works. You understand? You can't change what doesn't work. You can't. It's not going to change. It'll adapt, but you'll pay a price. Anytime someone maladapts to be with you, you're going to pay a price for it. Never stay with maladaptive energy. If it's not harmonizing positively, let it go. If it's broken, you're not going to fix it. We have to stop trying to fix everything that's broken in our lives. It's your life. You're not going to live it again. So stop hanging on to that which is broken. Let it go and engage in that which is not broken, that is harmonizing, that's honoring, that's joyful. Does that make sense to you or not? I'm going to live an authentic life, and I'm going to be defiant. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable being around me, gee, what happened to him? What's wrong with him? He's got an attitude. No matter how you castigate me, I'm going to go ahead and live my life, and I'm not going to live my life through you. I'm no longer an extension of your image of me that I have to honor. I have to honor me. Because how many times people master someone else's life and not their own? Because they want to be the good daughter, the good son, the good mother, the good father, the good friend. And they forgot what it was to be a good person. The one thing almost all people who are dying say in their last moments, I really wished I'd lived my own life. And that's universal. Ask anyone who works in hospice care. You mean it took to your death before you would actually be honest about you hadn't lived your own life? They're afraid. Because they had mastered the image, what everyone expected them to be like. And they alone knew that it wasn't their authentic self. Isn't it time we were defiant and said, it's my life. I'm going to live it honestly, ethically, morally, consciously, creatively, dynamically, excitedly, and with a lot of love. And that is the harmonizing energies. Thank you all.